Because I
I'm
have,
recording. Yep. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Yes. In case anybody couldn't make it, I know that they asked about recordings as well. Okay, so I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day. I know Saturday is a precious day where you're running around trying to get everything done, but this is time just to sit back and relax and you know, just marvel at how wonderful women are and praise the things that we do as women, despite many, many, many obstacles, and there have been obstacles for many, many years. And just we need to strive to help our new generation be strong in going forward and being strong with other sisters. And this is why I love being a Soroptimist because we just don't say no. And we just, our vision and our future is the women that are around us and the women that are coming up through our Live Your Dream programs and through our Dream It Be It for high school girls, giving them the courage and the information that they need to go forward. So thank you for taking time out of your busy days. We welcome you. We have a wonderful hour ahead, and we want to do a couple of things. One of the things is I wanted just to give you a little bit of history on International Women's Day. In 1908, 15,000 women marched through New York City demanding shorter hours, better pay, and voting rights. 1908, wonderful. Thank you. Then in 1911, International Women's Day was honored the first time in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland on the 19th of March. More than 1 million women and men attended International Women's Day rallies campaigning for women's rights to work, vote, be trained, to hold public office, and to end discrimination. And then 1 week after the first International Women's Day was celebrated, the tragic Triangle Fire in New York City took the lives of more than 140 women, most of them Italian and Jewish immigrants. This disaster event drew significant attention to working conditions and labor legislation in the United States that became a focus of subsequent International Women's Day events. So just to give you a little bit of history on that. So next, I'd like Suzanne to give us a land acknowledgement, please. You're mute, Suzanne. You're mute.
thank you. Yes, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting from many ancestral territories, both unceded and treatied. I myself am meeting from the unceded territory. I am an uninvited settler on Hawaiiate or Lasqueti Island, the traditional territory of Sliammon people. And I want to thank the ancestors, the present and future stewards of this land for their care and leadership on the land, and acknowledge that we are guests and commit to being a better guest than those who came before us, and commit to going forward in respect and reconciliation. Would anybody like to add anything to that land acknowledgement of your own? Yes, Barb.
I'm on the Erie Neutral Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga land, covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant.
Mm.
Anyone else? Okay.
Yes, Shy.
Shelby and I are on the land of the Mi'kmaq people, and they signed with the Wallace-Doherty the Friendship Treaty in 1972.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So Shy, thank you, Suzanne. So Shy, what is our Live Your Dream Award? If you can let some of our attendees, if they aren't familiar with Soroptimist, give us a review of that.
Yeah, so the Live Your Dreams Awards is a program that supports women who are the primary financial providers in their households and who are actively pursuing some form of education. Every year, Optimist distributes more than 2.9 million in education awards to over 2,000 women all over the world. And this year, our club was able to give away 11 awards to 11 incredible and hardworking women. With the support of Optimist Foundation of Canada, we were able to give away around 11,000 in scholarships that our recipients can use to offset any costs associated with their efforts to attain education, whether that be books, childcare, tuition, anything. This program has been going since 1972 because we believe that when we invest in women's education, it transforms lives and communities.
Thank you. Yes, and that's one of our major programs. And it is absolutely wonderful to be able to meet some of our Live Your Dream Awards recipients today. And so I want to make sure that I have everyone here. We'll go with Angelica. That's who I see right now. I don't know why I don't have other screens on, but I see, there we go. Um, oh, that's okay. So Angelica is here. Um, Bayush and Jesse. I'm wondering, is there anyone else that's an award winner that I can't see? Okay, so Angelica is from Calgary. She's doing her Bachelor's of Education, and she will be finished in April 2026. Angelica, did you want to say anything else or?
I just wanted to thank everyone for just making this opportunity possible. I know that it like a lot of women, it is a tough thing to be the only um, person to provide for their families, and I think that this is amazing. I just wanted to really say like a heartfelt thank you to every single one of you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for applying because it's people like you that we want to give this funding to. And you know, you work so hard. We know you need this recognition. It's very important to be recognized for your hard work and for making that step in having a family and being the head of your household and you know, actually taking the brave step of going back to school to make it better, not only for yourself, but for your family as well. So thank you, Angelica. And we have Bayesh Amari, and we talked a little bit earlier, but no one else heard this conversation because we arrived early because we're nurses. So Abayush is in Calgary and she's studying nursing and she will be finished in December 2025. So Bayush, did you want to add some information to your background?
Okay. First, I want to say thank you. I'm grateful for my award. I got last month's award. For that, I'm grateful. In past my experience, there was many challenge as I am a new immigrant for Canada and no family here and language barrier and there was so many things and also to yeah it wasn't easy really to pass those kind of challenge for me. Yeah, right now I'm already here. I'm almost there.
Thank you, Bayush, and we're glad you are here. And we are so thankful that you applied for this
Yeah.
because sometimes you're so busy, you just think, why would I do this? But it's wonderful for the Seroptimus Foundation of Canada to be able to put forward funding that we could go above and beyond. Many clubs just choose one recipient, and we were able, with the help of Seroptimus Foundation of Canada, to award 11 recipients for this award. So thank you for applying. Jessie, Jessie is going for her licensed practical nurse, and you live in Calgary. We had 4 people from Calgary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people from Calgary, which is wonderful. And you are going to be finished in December of 2025. Did you want to add anything to that, Jessie?
Thank you so much for the support. It really helps. I'm excited to graduate and be a nurse. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Well, you've chosen a good profession. I'm a nurse. And you're always needed wherever. So, 6 months and you'll be finished. So hopefully the award has helped you a little bit. And Chyler is the chair of the Live Your Dream Award. So she, and I see Margaret's here as well, she and Margaret will be putting their heads together to see how they can support you throughout the next year while you're trying to finish up and get moving into the workforce. Suzanne.
So thank you, Barb. I just have to say to these 3 women, you are absolute rock stars. You are the strongest women, and I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. You are the strongest women in this room. You have met challenges, you've overcome obstacles, you've come this far, and we believe in you, and we believe that you will finish your fabulous education and use your economic empowerment for the good of your health and life and your family's health and life, and your communities will benefit. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and so the recipient of the first place actually has been her resume has been forwarded to Western Canada region, and in our region, they will have an opportunity to be chosen to go to nationals. And so at the regional level, it is a $5,000 incentive, and then on to Seroptimus International of the Americas, where, am I right in Chyler, is it 10,000 US dollars in?
It is.
It is, with a lot of other perks too, because I remember my older club had first prize or recipient in Seroptimus International, and she got all kinds of electronics and all kinds of perks, which was absolutely incredible. So thank you, ladies, for your bravery, and thank you for taking that step in applying, because sometimes you think, is this going to be worth it? And I think you've proven to yourself that it has been worthwhile. And we will welcome you to our meetings anytime you wish to come to see what we're all about. And we wish the very, very best for you in your chosen professions. So anything else anyone wants to bring forward with this? Okay. So I also want to thank one of our judges who's here, and that is Janet Bernard. And thank you, Janet, for stepping forward and assessing our award recipients. It's not an easy task to do because it just is. These women are all amazing. They're all amazing. Trying to score them is very difficult, but thank you for taking the time to do that. And our other two were unable to make it because of commitment. So we have 3 judges usually that go over the award recipients' documentation. And that's how we choose the first place recipient. Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is look at our guest speakers. And we have Chyler Webb. Oh, am I supposed to introduce them or you? Oh, okay. Chyler Webb and Shelby Rideout. So Chyler and Shelby not only are members of ours, they live in Nova Scotia. And so they're totally dedicated because they start our meetings, what, at 9:30 at night?
Sometimes 10.
Oh my goodness. I thought 8:30 was bad, but 9:30 at night. So they're dedicated to our Soroptimist meetings and but also our dedicated students. And we are going to listen to some of their wise information on intersectionality women's studies. And because we are looking at accelerating and action, that's what is the focus of International Women's Day. And these 2 young women are going to tell us how we can put ourselves in motion. So thank you so much for agreeing to do that. And can you share the screen or do I have to do something about that?
I'm trying to take care of it. Just give me a minute.
Okay, thanks, Shelby.
Yeah, let me know if I need to remove the spotlight from you. But I don't think so.
I'm just getting it set up.
Technology's iffy.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Okay.
Chai, how about if you tell everybody your field of study and Shelby's field of study, and if you know what your plans are in the future.
Sure, yeah. So I'm studying political science and English, and Shelby is doing women and gender studies, sociology, and psychology, I believe. She has 2 minors, so she's cool like that. Um, I want to teach in the future, and I want to go into policy education. And Shelby is interested in holistic health and women's rights, so she wants to go somewhere in that realm of career.
Chai, you're actually reverberating your voice, so I don't know. Are you up too high in your audio?
It might be me, actually. Let me try and mute
Okay,
myself.
thanks.
Does that sound better?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, we're just very passionate about activism and women's rights and Indigenous rights and everything. So we're trying to model our careers around them.
You're on mute, Chai.
I'm explaining to Shelby
Oh,
how to get it on her screen.
so Shelby and Chai are roommates. So that's why she can jump from one computer to the other. And don't you love technology? So this is what we grapple with, but most of the time it works well. And maybe you guys can go on one computer. No? Are you set now?
I think we've gotten it figured out. Does that look good on my end?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. I think we're good then. I'm just gonna get started. All right, guys. So, thank you so much for having me and Shai. It's an honor to speak to you guys. My degree, as Shai said, is Women and Gender Studies, and so this is like my life, my passion, everything. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you guys about some of these really important and integral concepts to the idea of activism within women and gender studies and women's rights, because it's developed a lot. I mean, Barbara gave us a little bit of a history on what International Women's Day stemmed from and where that started. And it started through activism, but that activism isn't done. And so I thought I'd bring, me and Shai thought we'd bring in some really integral new ideas and stuff like that to kind of get us thinking about how we can be better activists and speak up and advocate for the people that need advocating. Okay, this is working. Oh, I got it working. We're great. Okay. So we would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kma'ki people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. We thank the land for hosting us today and for allowing us to live alongside the earth. It's an honor to live in this beautiful place that we call home. Nova Scotia has been my home for many years. And I just think it's such a beautiful place to be. Canada in general is. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about some concepts that we're going to kind of use to fuel throughout this presentation. So first off, we have intersectionality. So intersectionality is a really key concept when we're talking about women and feminism and equality in general, because of the fact that we all have different intersecting identities. So intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, which basically she used in a court case, a very, very important court case, to prove that though a company may not be discriminating against somebody for their race or discriminating against somebody for their gender, they were inherently discriminating against Black women because of their unique intersecting identities. So General Motors was only hiring Black men for their grounds work and factory work, and was only hiring white women for their administrative jobs. They were not hiring Black women. And because of the fact that they weren't inherently discriminating against race or against gender, these women didn't have any case. And so Kimberly, who is a lawyer, decided that this is a really important concept that we need to bring into fruition. She coined it. She was like, you want to know something? We don't have something to talk about this with. So here we are, intersectionality. So intersectionality allows us to understand how these intersections kind of create different unique experiences of oppression within our society, and how different structures of power oppress certain groups of people, and how those intersections and those oppressions intersect to create more advantageous and disadvantageous lifestyles for people. So the next thing we're going to talk about is structures of power. So we talked about that briefly in intersectionality. And what I mean by structures of power, I mean white supremacy, colonialism, hetero cis patriarchy, and capitalism. So we can talk about those a little. White supremacy is pretty obvious. I feel like most people know what I mean when I say white supremacy, but it basically just means that we believe or we exist in a society that holds whiteness as a race above other groups or other people of color. And colonialism is something we will be talking about in the next slide, so I will wait to define that. But hetero-cis patriarchy, that's a mouthful, and it's kind of confusing if you don't know what you're talking about. But hetero-cis patriarchy is a blend of a few things. So obviously we know what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is the idea that men are superior to women in a society. And when we're talking about hetero and cis, we're talking about the fact that the society also values heterosexual people more and heterosexual relationships more. And they also value cisgender people. So that means people that are presenting with the gender that they were assigned at birth. So this excludes trans people, for example, or non-binary people. And capitalism is basically the number one governing agent of our society. It's the economy, it's money, it controls everything. It's a very, very all-encompassing. And another concept is intersectional feminism. So we talked about intersectionality, but it's feminism that considers the perspectives of diverse groups of people. This is a very important form of feminism, specifically because of the fact that feminism has had the history of being very whitewashed and very exclusionary to different groups of people. Like, for instance, some people that are feminists believe that women that have transitioned from being men or trans women do not count as women and should not be protected in the same, which is not okay. So intersectional feminism really, really relies on the concept of no exclusivity. So other examples of intersectional theories could be Black feminism, environmental justice, and other anti-racist/humanistic theories and movements. So we're going to talk a little bit about privilege and power. Recently in Soroptimist, we've gotten the chance to learn more about indigeneity and the cultures that founded this land that we live on and lived here way before settlement happened. And so I thought it was really important to bring this into this presentation in the current climate that we're living in. So colonialism, like I mentioned in the previous screen, is a structure of power. And it is defined as a relationship of domination between an invading colonizing state and a local indigenous society. One thing that's really important to understand is that colonialism is kind of an all-encompassing structure. However, under colonialism, there are certain types of colonialism. For instance, Canada is the victim of what's called settler colonialism. And this basically means that it's a form of colonialism that aims to replace one society with another by expropriating land, eliminating indigenous societies, and building a new society in their place. The characteristics of settler colonialism is that it's territorial, it's genocidal, it's violent, it's permanent and ongoing and incomplete. So it's really important that we understand some of these concepts that go under settler colonialism, because a lot of people have the tendency to believe that colonialism is something that's one and done, like it happened in the past, but it's not happening anymore, which is very incorrect, because as you can see, some of the characteristics are the fact that it is ongoing and it is incomplete, which means that when they did settle on this land, they didn't wipe out all indigenous societies, even though that might have been and was their objective, which means that it's incomplete and ongoing. So that's still something that they're trying to do. They're not doing it as maybe in your face as they used to be doing it, but it's still happening. The consequences are still here, and indigenous people are still trying to be erased. Another thing to think about within this privilege and power concept is knowledge and history. So it's really important to ask ourselves, what perspective are we learning from? What perspective is this news coming from? Who's narrating and recording these stories and histories? Who's telling you about how these treaties were signed? Who's telling you about what counts as ownership and what doesn't count as ownership? What counts as rights? What doesn't count as rights? So it's really, really important to be critical and ask yourself, who are these people? Where do they come from? Are they speaking on behalf of everybody? Or even if they're not trying to do it intentionally, simply being somebody who does not have the experience of, say, an Indigenous person, you cannot speak on their behalf. You cannot, for instance, me as a white woman, I cannot speak on their behalf. I can come from a stance of doing research and having knowledge on this through doing research and doing my education, but I am not an Indigenous person, and I do not have the right to speak about their problems or to speak for them. So when somebody on the news is sharing a circumstance of, say, missing and murdered Indigenous women, you have to ask yourself, sure, they might be sharing this story, but how are they sharing this story? What are they leaving out? What aren't they saying? What are they saying, but what aren't they saying? So to kind of round out this section, I wanted to kind of bring to mind some tools and what can we do. So knowing that our society is so heavily influenced by these structures of power that dominate the way that we receive media, the way that we learn, it's really important to be critical in a society where we're consuming so much media all the time. Social media, news, every form of media, it's just flooding into our lives, and it's impossible to escape it in the political climate that we're living in. So it's really important to set boundaries and to be critical about what you're consuming. You know, is it factual? We all know the concept of fact checks, but it's not just about fact checking. It's about fact checking who is telling you this stuff, who is the one sharing these stories. So yeah, we're gonna go into the next slide here. All right, so dismantling structures of power. So every structure and struggle are intertwined and intersectional with each other. So we cannot dismantle one system without dismantling them all. This sounds really daunting and scary when you think about it. But I think it's almost like an exciting challenge for us, you know, as these bright thinkers in this, you know, new field, trying to, you know, what could that look like? I think it's exciting that, you know, there may not be all the answers now. We don't ever have all the answers, but it's important to understand that each of these power structures feed into each other and enable each other. And so you can't dismantle poverty without dismantling patriarchy or capitalism or etc. So how can we dismantle these, and how can we move forward and take initiative? Imagination is a really, really important part. Creativity, thinking outside the box. What could it look like? One of the things that I've really been studying lately is the concept of joy and activism and community and activism. You know, there is no activism or change without community and joy. That is the foundational starting points, is finding the joy, because you connect with people, you're able to share that experience with them and grow closer to them and support them in the best ways you possibly can, while being for them in a time of joy. We also cannot do anything when we're all so burnt out from trying to do stuff all the time. Joy is super important in balancing that out so that you have the energy to be able to fight against these very heavy and dark things. So it's really important, as I said, to know that they feed off and enable each other, which means that we must come together to fight against oppression in every form to make progress against any one issue. So the concept here is that you don't need to be just a feminist, just fighting feminist issues. You can be a woman that's a feminist, but is also ready to sit here and fight for Indigenous justice. The key concept here is community and coalition building, is crossing past that border of like, oh no, you're a white woman, you can't fight for this. Just because it's not your story to tell and it's not your issue doesn't mean you can't support those around you, and doesn't mean we can't all come together to say, hey, all of these things are simply anti-humanism. It's all systems of power and people trying to suppress human beings in general. And so simply we're fighting for human rights at the core of all of this. And so transecting those lines that kind of define whether you are a part of this movement or you're a part of this movement is really important, because labels and boxes are a construct within these systems of power. And then the final note here is that we need each other. We need diversity and inclusion. and we need privileged voices to advocate and uplift marginalized voices. All right, so we're going to do a chat bomb. That's the end of my section. Thank you for bearing with me. I know it was very text heavy. But this is our chat bomb. So this is our midway through chat bomb. So here's my question. If you can, please answer this question in the chat. What are your intersections, and how can you use this understanding of your own intersectional identity to discard limiting labels and create a more inclusive space? Sean, I'm going to leave this one to you because I can't see the chat because I'm presenting. So this is on you, girl.
I'm waiting for things to roll in. We have white privileged European ancestry. Oh yeah. All backgrounds are needed. To be an ally. Yeah. That's super important. Using your identity and your privilege to be an ally when you know other people can't. Super important. So we have people who are single to learn how to be a respectful ally. Age, physical health, and education. Yeah, those are all things that will impact the way you approach diversity in these spaces. I think that's all really important. Consciousness versus unconsciousness, expansion versus contraction. Yeah, I love that. Living out of defense without judgment. I think that's a great way to put it, and a great way to use your own identity to help others. I am white, but also Native. Yeah. Yeah. You have both sides. I'm the same way. My dad is white. My mom is Cree. Oh gosh, another Cree person. Yay, that's so exciting. All right. I think that we can move off from the chat bomb and go to my super fun section. So my passion and area of study a lot of the time is queer theory and Indigenous studies. So queer theory is a critical lens that challenges traditional gender and sexuality binaries by analyzing how these categories are socially constructed while including the experiences and opinions of 2S LGBTQ plus people, essentially arguing that the fight for gender equality should encompass all expressions of gender and sexuality. Queer theory disrupts lesbian and gay studies, as well as women's studies, by avoiding binary contrast between female and male, feminine and masculine, homosexual and heterosexual, and so on. Nevertheless, queer theory is compatible with the existence of female and male identities, transgender identities, and various other identities that exist, be it comfortably or uncomfortably within the binary system. So through gender socialization, which is a common experience definitive of womanhood, like gender norms, society has come accustomed to viewing women and men into explicitly different boxes. That's erasing gender diverse identities and making it impossible for them to exist. Gender socialization has been strongly criticized by failing to acknowledge the diversity of women and has the effect of being falsely universalizing and exclusionary, i.e., is this something that is genuinely based? Is something that we all, experience because of nature, or were we just socialized to believe it was normal? There are two main types of feminism that are explored in queer theory, liberal and radical. But in regard to our specific conversation today and the fight for women's rights, radical feminism offers a look into the drastic side of things. Radical feminism calls for a more extensive restructuring of social institutions. More radical views still demand separatism to address the ubiquitous patriarchal features in men and women, their relations and their interactions. The most radical lesbian feminists maintain that feminist ideals are only fully expressed in the lesbian existence, since heterosexuality promotes the subordination of women to men and their oppression by men, through sexual activity, the marriage contract, and reproduction. These feminists are prominent in all kill the men radical movements on social media and actively believe that women should take the position of men in society, that men should be oppressed and abused in the same way that women have been for centuries. The term gender only became a common term around the 1970s, and there remains significant disagreement about how the sex-gender distinction should be characterized. Some feminists reject the concept of gender and practice gender-critical feminism, This argues that gender is biological, binary, and immutable. This was also adopted as an alternative label for trans exclusionary and used by transgender theorists to refer to feminists who did not endorse the transgender theorist's view on transgender identity. Some of these concepts are incredibly harmful, and it is important to be aware of them because there are many facets of activism that have hidden systems of power and oppression in their beliefs, values, and methods. Excluding transgender and non-binary individuals from the women's rights movement is removing the efforts of those who came before us and those who lost their lives. Transgender women face severe violence, often facing intense sexual and physical abuse simply for existing, and they have been fighting for women's rights alongside cisgender women since the beginning. Some notable stories, which all are important, but these ones are some trailblazers, are that of Martha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Laverne Cox, and Cecilia Chung. If you have the opportunity to learn their stories, I urge that you do so. These women are some of many examples as why queer theory is an imperative part for our equal rights and our fight for equal rights. Current issues involve, the transgender sports ban, access to gender-affirming care, bodily autonomy, abortion rights, adoption rights, and our access to education. These are all being infected by queer theory. So my next point, if I'll get Shelby to change the slide, woo, is that my thing said. Well, women in decolonializing feminism. So what this means is that decolonization is the remedy that harms, oh my gosh, I'll restart. Decolonization is the remedy against the harms caused by settler ideology. This is a quote said by Cecilia Bodwell Jones. Decolonizing feminism is an imperative step in gender equality. Feminists of color challenge the belief in a universal, argued, and shared experience of womanhood and encourage action against the racist ideals of women movements. Bell Hooks argued that first wave feminism only satisfied white bourgeois women, their interest, and has left Black and working class women wanting. And for a long time, this reigned true. As society has developed, so has the feminist movement, but there are still issues that need addressing, such as the belief that it doesn't affect me and therefore it can't be that bad. A prime example of how this attitude can create more problems than solve are missing and murdered Indigenous women. This is not an issue held by white feminists and therefore not frequently discussed in rooms where white feminists are the only people present. If we want to save the lives of Indigenous women and ensure justice for those who have been taken from their families and communities, then we need to approach feminist issues with a broad lens and open mind, starting with educating ourselves on topics such as settler colonization. So settler colonialism, as Shelby mentioned, is not a past event that is over and done with, but rather as a system that has been constructed and must now be deconstructed. The aim of this structure is the extinction of First Peoples. This requires examining settler colonial bias based largely on hidden and gendered colonial logics, such as the classic binary logic and the gender binary that stigmatize and disempower Indigenous women. There is not frequently gender hierarchies in a lot of Indigenous beliefs. Feminism has historically been a contested movement that has generated skepticism among Indigenous women. This stumps any political alliance between Indigenous women and feminism as a framework of analysis and activism, especially when the educator is using white-based, colonial-impacted feminist ideals and methodology. Now, some Indigenous scholars identify with a working definition of Indigenous feminism, acknowledging the possibility of incorporating it within the general framework of feminism in general, and some adopt the term Native feminist analysis in the attempt to combat colonial hierarchies. Their common aim is to challenge the traditional canon of white European settlers. However, feminism is viewed as undermining traditional gender norms of Indigenous community, which has engendered the rejection of feminism by Indigenous scholars. Decolonizing methods and practices in feminist philosophy would necessarily involve ensuring that Indigenous culture and presence become prominent features of the feminist philosophical canon through active engagement and genuine inclusion of Indigenous perspectives that transform feminist philosophical theorizing. This would entail that a radical, interrogated, and transformed method of approaching settler bias, aka hidden gender, would be interrogated and transformed. So some of the challenges of indigenizing and decolonizing feminist philosophy involve the concern that there might not be enough interest in feminist philosophy to take up the project in the first place. To indigenize and decolonize genuinely might frighten or alarm settler feminist philosophers, as it would mean giving up settler privilege of land, property, and intellectual presence in creating liberatory strategies towards social injustice. It wasn't meant just to include Indigenous perspective of analysis, of course, but Indigenous perspectives are able to inform and determine the meaning of feminism within Indigenous communities to move toward a decolonized justice. Settlers must go beyond feeling shame and recognizing the harms colonialism has done wrong. They should engage in material actions such as the repartition of the land to Indigenous people. Apologies without actions are excuses disguised as guilt. Taking accountability means nothing if we continue to allow history to repeat itself. If we do not take the steps to not just include Indigenous voices, but encourage them and ensure equity and education access. Decolonizing feminism is something we as women's rights activists must recognize our roles in. All right, this is my final little slide before my question for you guys. And it is the philosophy of, feminism and identity politics. The notion of gender is too complex to fully grasp, as it is difficult to develop one that is clear and precise. How can we talk about injustices about women without precise notions of what we mean by women? How can feminists continue to make political demands for women as a group when it is unclear if that group even exists? If you don't have an idea of what a woman is, then you can't really say something is an injustice to women. So there are all issues and questions identity politics and feminist philosophy aims to address. So feminist philosophy challenges the traditional ideal of value neutrality. This is the idea that research or analysis can be conducted without being influenced by personal values or biases, particularly regarding gender, and that one can present findings without advocating for a specific moral or political stance. This means without facing issues of racism, homophobia, transphobia, poverty, access to education, immigration, sexual violence, a lot of active political movements. Now, all women are different. They have different lives, intersectional identities, and passions. These individual traits explain how they develop their own truth, and truth is the basis of neutrality. But if every woman is different, then neutrality is impossible because truth is subjective. To be a group, there must be shared traits, which means we must define what it means to be a woman, but how do we do that? Who reserves the right and who holds the knowledge to decide this? Well, for as long as we can remember, men have. In a patriarchal, heteronormative colonial society, a woman would be submissive, white, able-bodied, upper-class, Christian, and straight. We know in our beautiful and diverse world that this is not the only kind of woman. We can't fight for women's rights if women as a group cannot be defined, because the separation of women as a group and women as individuals is extremely problematic and enables systemic gender injustice. Gender injustice does not target women as individuals, but as a group considered as a social kind. This is a set of beliefs or ideologies that are running through a system in which society is truth. We already know that truth is subjective, so we continue in a loop of dead ends until the introduction of identity politics. Identity politics is a political mobilization based on membership in women's social kind, where shared experiences or traits delimits kind membership. Something currently happening in the world of identity politics comes from the Guardian journalist Ash Sakar, who published an article a few days ago entitled "The Left Keeps Getting Identity Politics Wrong, and the Right is Benefiting from That." Instead of liberation, we've ended up with competitive grievance, weaponized victimhood, and a focus on I and not us. So this article is worth the read, and this moment in politics is an important one to keep our eyes on. Global politics has seen a rise in the blurring of lines between Western politics and the rest of the world, especially with the Trump administration in full swing. If we, as women's rights activists, are aware of the politics around us, we will be better equipped to support women globally. I want to bring attention to the final passage from this article, with touches on the working class and racialized minorities being pinned against one another, how social media encourages insecurity and separation when we need is solidarity, grand generalizations, and how the radical right is pushing their own identity politics before I prompt you all with my question. So Sakar wrote that competing in the attention economy incentivizes us to turn molehills into mountains, and the cult of lived experience makes it hard to question proclamations of victimhood. The I has taken over identity politics. Instead of striving for liberation from discrimination and material oppression, we just want to inflate the invisibility issue. The retreat into subjective experience primes us for the politics of resentment, competitive grievance, and weaponized victimhood. While the personal is political, the self is a dead end if what you want is a social change. It's worth remembering the lesson of narcissists. Being too interested in your own reflection will kill you. So, my chat bomb for you guys. With what we've discussed regarding intersectionality and the diversity of women, how has your intersectional identity impacted your understanding of identity politics, Indigenous feminism, and queer theory? And while we read your stuff in the chat, that's it for me and Shelby. Thank you guys for listening to our long spiel of everything we've been studying recently, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this with you guys.
Yes, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to leave this up for just a few while we get some chat bombs in. Shy, did you want me to take this one or do you want to take this one?
You can take it if you can see it.
All right. Okay, so education, mental health, age. Yeah, so education definitely shapes how you understand that because, again, me and Shai are privileged to be members of a secondary or post-secondary institution, which allows us to be able to research things like this. You're struggling how to balance intersectionality with creating community. So I think that the important kind of maybe way to kind of meld those two is that intersectionality and creating community are important because of the fact that it allows us to accept that community doesn't have to look like separate, specific, labeled things. It can look like everybody kind of coming together and being like, hey, all of these things kind of suck. How do we change that? We're all, kind of experiencing different levels of oppression, some more than others and some more severe than others. But how can we all come together and create a community that's here to kind of advocate for everybody? It is definitely a lot of information to weigh and consider. It's heavy. Yep. Thank you. I think we all are intersectional women or intersectional people in general. I mean, just because of the fact that you come from a place of power or privilege doesn't mean that you don't have intersections. You can have intersections and still be advantaged in the society that we live in. I think that it's really important to maybe the homework we can take away from today, because again, all of this stuff is a little heavy. And again, me and Shai have done numerous years of education to be able to talk to you guys about these things. So maybe the thing we can kind of take away is just coming from a personal standpoint or even within your society, just and within the people around you, just recognizing their intersections, recognizing where they're coming from, recognizing where you're coming from. When you speak in a room, what is kind of behind that? What educated you to be there to make that speech or have that talk that you've been talking about? Like, where did that come from? How did you get there? We all have such individual experiences that intersect through many realms of being. Exactly. All right, I think we're good. So let me just stop sharing. There we go.
So that's awesome, you guys. And we just have a few minutes more left. So I'd love to just open it up to any questions or comments. And I want to say I'm super excited by the notion of kind of putting all oppression of different groups and situations just under the banner of human rights, and that working on one form of oppression is working on all oppression. So the notion of environmental justice um, impacts women and girls more, and fighting for that can create more human rights for women and girls, whether it's women of color, Indigenous, the work that our club wants to do in learning how to be helpful and respectful allies for Indigenous communities. So that I think that's really exciting. So thank you. And Carol asked in the chat, yeah, what is your definition of a woman?
Okay, so my definition of what a woman is, or like the best way I could explain it, sorry, computers, um, is that there is no proper definition yet because the way that our society is set up, everything is really informed and based around the patriarchy, heteronormativity, the traditional cisgendered straight person. And so all of the current definitions we have right now are straight white woman who, does this gender socialized thing and wears pink and is very stereotypical. And so what we're doing in the world of queer theory is dismantling that. And with philosophy of feminism, we're trying to actually find what the core of a woman is. Some people believe it's just the shared experience of female-based oppression. Others believe it to be, if you identify and experience what it means to be a woman, whether you're transgender or cisgender, that also means you're a woman. It's just so complex that it's really hard to pinpoint one definition.
Gloria.
Oh, all right. Well, first, I'd like to thank Shelby and Shy for your presentation, and it's heartening to see that women as young as you only because as old as I am, are just interested in this and passionate about this and wanting to get the message across. I come from a background in terms of my career background in advertising and marketing and media and all of this. And basically the messages were always with clients taking a large piece of information and somehow distilling it so that the average person could understand it within a relatively short period of time. So what I would say, because all of this information, which is all very, very relevant, but in reaching people who aren't within the understanding of the terminology that you use, your vernacular, the what you use to convey all the different ideas, I think even for me, like first hearing all this terminology, and I'm just like, what? And I think the average person out there, I think who you would be trying to reach outside of your group that is a full understanding of the different transgender issues, all the different issues. So this person out here, male, because I can see males just maybe hearing the terminology and then just turning away. Like I can see people who aren't understanding of what you're saying, just going like this. So I think as part of all of this, in terms of reaching people and getting this message across, there has to be, on some level, a simplification of the ideas. There has to be a way of talking to them so that, and not a lot of information at different times, but somehow, and this is just the idea that all of this be looked at in terms of how can we not simplify it so that it's stupid, but simplify it so that someone would be able to understand, to grasp different parts of it and have time with it and think about it And so I think, I don't know if I'm conveying that correctly, but it's basically what I know people's understanding to be. And the nowadays everything is in short bites. You know that yourself, social media, whatever. It's out there and it's quick, and then they're moving on to something else. And here you have a very, very complex subject matter. And I think, how are you reaching the the women, but also the males, so that they're understanding it, because they're used to the short bites, and this is complex and big. So I'm thinking, as you move forward, think of ways to somehow, I don't, whether there are different ways, I guess, graphically, verbally, print or whatever, of making it more digestible. So
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about in our degree, and it's definitely hard to convey something like this, because I myself, as a student in like this degree, can agree that it is very jargony.
I fall behind a lot.
Lots of very heavy words. And I think, kind of addressing what you were saying, I think that making theory and stuff like this accessible is a very, very hard task, but it's one that definitely has to be done, especially when we're talking about making, these kinds of concepts like regular practice. And I think that's kind of what we tried to do, but it's, again, a lot of topics to cover in a very short time. So hopefully, I think that the main points we were trying to get across was that we need to create community across barriers, not letting the labels that we live with or live under or are oppressed by stop us from connecting with people and making change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. I see Bayush has her hand raised.
Yes. Thank you. Just I have one more question. Maybe you will answer me, or you're gonna focus for the future. I don't know. Just I want to ask, what did you do on the ground to live along together in immigrant women and men? Because as I see in my experience, I have so many struggle, and especially to have a friend is not easy after I get a single mom to find a friend, because their concept is too bad as I understand them. A man could be a woman, a single mom they don't accept easily single mom. Single mom is very, very dangerous for them, especially in my community as I see them. I live in Canada almost more than 5 years. It's tough to find friends, especially if they are in marriage. They assume me in negative way. I cannot be friend, even to be friend. You see, they bull too much for a single mom, especially in immigrant. Yeah, what did you do in the ground for this kind of situation? For me, I didn't expect this happen at me, because back home, if we divorce, they don't care for us. We live just peaceful. Here, when we divorce, even a woman is scared her husband, they don't want to be friend for me. And they bull me a lot, especially when they see my energy, like to go to school and raise by myself my daughter. Yeah, they don't need. That's why, that's why I think we have to work on the people mindset. They have to change their conscious.
Yeah, I think that's such an important issue. So my family is immigrant. They come from Ukraine. And so when my baba and my aunts and everyone first got here, I remember them talking about how difficult it was to make those connections with the language barrier and, you know, the stereotype of what it meant to be an immigrant. And my baba is divorced and went through that and was really ostracized by our community for not only, you know, being divorced and a single mother at the time, but for also being an immigrant and from Ukraine. There was not the best stereotype of Slavic people in Canada at the time. So it was very hard for her, and it is still kind of hard for her to make friends because she has that history of a single mom. And there is a lot of prejudice in Canada against single mothers, I've noticed just in my own experience. And, you know, Shelby's mom's a single mom, and it can be hard, and we do have to reframe that. And so a lot of the things we do is we just take the minute if we have someone who, you know, kind of shows that prejudice to just educate them and be like, hey, so that's not correct. And it's unfair to who I am as a person for you to assume that. And I would love to be your friend or get to know you, but you seem to be obsessed with one part of my identity. And from there, you can kind of like have a conversation if it works. Some people are just stubborn in their ways. Canadians can be stubborn as holy hell.
Especially
Pardon my
because they want to
language.
pretend that they're not oppressive. You know, our neighbors to the south, they are at least
Very
upfront
vocal.
about the fact that they're racist and bigoted. Canada tries to pretend that they're not, but they are.
We've seen it with like the erasure of the residential schools and the sheer, you know, refusal to admit that we still have some homophobic laws. And yeah, Canada likes to be silent in this.
Yeah, they play mind game too much. Even woman, not just the man. Okay, man, okay. I heard it, and I don't need to divorce really. Just happen at me because of the life, you know. That one also hurted me, and again, my community started to hurt me. You see, it's in different way. My always they play mind game. And if I have no family here, I need my community. Even from the community, they push you. It's very, very dangerous, especially for us, as I see. But yeah, white people understand a lot why it happens, this kind of thing. They understand, as I see them. Our community is very dangerous. Yeah, that's why sometimes when I finish my class and when I pursue my dream, yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud
Good.
by myself.
And
That's very dangerous.
you should be proud, Bayush. Thank you. Thank you for your question. I see Kim has a question or a comment.
For me, usually a comment, but you know, I was a single mom, and I found I wasn't treated any differently. In fact, I was treated the same. However, you are correct when it comes to cultures. Certain cultures are not as accepting, and that's when you have to sort of take the initiative on your own, and it can be hard to try and you said it yourself. You have to just re-educate the people around you, and it is tough. I have not had to emigrate anywhere else in the world. I am still living in the same province I was born in. So there isn't that cultural difference for me. But I think that this is an opportunity for you to take that on yourself and just be bold and just let people know who you are, what you're here, and be proud as anything for what you've accomplished, because you're more likely the better person in the long run. And because if you can do all that and still come forward and raise your child and make your life in Canada that much better, you've got a lot going for you. And that's your opportunity to do that for yourself. That's just my little 2 bits.
Thanks, Kim. Suzanne?
Yeah, I just want to say, again, you know, Bayush, we Seroptimists believe in you, and there are we're looking at, you know, that you've got one Live Your Dream Award to help with your education expenses, and you know, we would say, how else can we be of service? How else can we yeah, help you to be your best? And there are Seroptimists in Calgary also. So I think there, you know, Seroptimist is about supporting women and girls. So let's see how we can do that. And as I said before, you are one of the strongest women in this room, and you will not just survive, but you will thrive.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne. Yes, and I'm aware of times we've gone over a bit, but I think these have been wonderful discussions. Shelby and Chai, thank you so much. I think, one of the original feminists out of all my girlfriends, and actually went to Queen's Park and got kicked out of Queen's Park for my rowdyism, I guess. It was sort of, but you know, what a pleasure to hear the both of you and the education that you're getting there. You know, there was nothing really. I did some women's studies, but it wasn't really dissecting it the way you have. I think this has been such an eye opener for me, and an incredible journey. And actually looking at my own perspectives, and we're trying a little bit in our club by, you know, starting out with Indigenous studies, and looking at truth before reconciliation. And so it's opening up your mind, isn't it? And just accepting and understanding. But I think knowledge is actually key with this as well. So please, ladies, you keep your studies going, and fight, and I'll show you how to be kicked out of your legislature if you if you want someone to back you up. You've got to make changes, and you got to make noise as well, you know. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to add to this? I see the hearts coming up. You've worked very hard on this, and we really appreciate looking at this in a deeper way. So I think this comes to our conclusion, and thank you all for attending. It's been wonderful. I saw one of our Live Your Dream award recipients came on a little bit late. She studies Leila Marie Martinez. She studies biology, wants to become a doctor, and she's in the Oshawa area, but had to leave because she has to go to work. So thank you very much for attending, and happy International Women's Day. It's wonderful to be a woman, but we have a lot of work still to do.
Thank you.
Yes, heart.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
See you.
And thank you, Arlena and Cheryl, for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Take care.
Thank you.
And